Shalom, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai, Barak the Yahweh, Barak the Yahweh Shai. To all praises to Yahweh, Bashim Yahweh Shai, and double honors to the apostles, elders, and bishops of Great Millstone, and peace and salutations to the hopeful elect across the planet Earth, pushing this truth, the spirit, and sincerity, and in truth. So yeah, I just came across this article. Just more prophecies just popping off the page, man. I had to rush it today, so I mean the truth is out. Whoever wrote this article, you know, he either knows the truth through the spirit, was flowing through this person because it says the U.S. dragged by Israel into unlawful war with Iran, Gulf state. So that, at least the flock shall draw them out. Go into that word draw. It's dragged. And they even say drawn, in the actual article. But yeah, this was published today, March 19th. Actually, it was published yesterday, March 19th. Today's the 20th. Friday, March 20th, 2026. That's entitled U.S. Dragged by Israel into Unlawful War with Iran. Dragged by Israel. And that's straight prophecy, man. And that's what's happening. This is, the times, that we're living in. Scripture say measure the time diligently in itself, man. So yeah, we got to be close to this thing, man. And Washington now needs help to disengage, but they're not going to disengage, man. It's just gonna spiral more and more, snowball effect. So the U.S. has been drawn by Israel into an unlawful war against Iran. Because the Most High is controlling these men. The Most High is, working on the minds of these different leaders, these different kings, and governors, prime ministers, whatever you want to call them, to bring out his word, man, his prophecies. U.S. has been drawn by Israel into an unlawful war against Iran and needs help to disengage. They're not going to disengage, man. In an opinion piece published by The Economist on Wednesday, the Middle East nation's top diplomat called on U.S. allies in the region to tell the truth about the conflict and admit that Washington has lost control of its own foreign policy. There are two parties to this war who have nothing to gain from it, referring to the U.S. and Iran. Well, I mean, there's everything to gain, man. Really, the destruction of this place, destruction of America, Babylon the Great, destruction of Israel, and the return of our, Lord and Savior Yahweh Shai. That's what's to gain, They don't understand it. But, the men of the Lord, the hopeful elect, they understand it. What's going on. Everybody wants to talk about how this just doesn't make any sense. And how Trump is, off his rocker. But he's just doing, what the Lord wants him to do, man. Nero coming back, man. The U.S. maintains close security and defense partnerships with 6 Gulf states: Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Oman, and has significant military presence in that region, including bases and naval facilities. That's also scriptural, man, because that's where, that World War III is going to take place. Valley of Jehoshaphat, right there in the Middle East. Lord says he's going to move far off from the northern army, between the Red Sea and the Euphrates River. The escalation has had economic and security consequences for these states. And, there's going to be a global reset as far as economic, monetarily, man. They got to push this chip. They got to get rid of this system that they're dealing with now and bring on that digital currency system so they can push that microchip. And no man might be able to buy or sell, at least he has the mark. And that has to come first before the missiles drop. Because any man that takes that chip, it's going to be a test. The great hour of temptation, you know, with Iran retaliating against targets on their territory. Gulf officials have reportedly complained that they were not consulted or warned before the U.S. and Israel launched the campaign against Iran on February 28th. Yeah, because they're doing what they're doing, man. It's the hammer of the earth. And the least of the flock is drawing them out, man. They don't need to consult anyone, apparently. You're supposed to go through Congress to start a war. You have to go through Congress to get that approval and permission, so to speak, and they haven't done that. That's why they're not really calling it a war yet, because Congress hasn't approved it. So they're calling it a conflict. An unlawful war as well, But the point, is titled, "The U.S. dragged by Israel into unlawful war," and the U.S. has been drawn by Israel into an unlawful war. So he's dragged and drawn. And that's scriptural. Jeremiah 49 and as well as Jeremiah 50. This is Jeremiah 49:20. "Therefore hear the counsel of the Lord, Yahweh Shai, that he hath taken against Edom, so-called white man Edom, the Edomites, and his purpose that he proposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them." Yeah, so the least of the flock is referring to Amalek, what they call Israelis today, so-called Jews, man, the ones that call themselves Jews today. They are the least of the flock, mainly because they were the youngest out of all Esau's descendants. He had his 5 main sons and then the grandchildren. So he was the youngest, grandchild. So he was the least of the flock. It's referring to Amalek. Going to the least. The Hebrew word there is Tzayar. Tzayar means little, insignificant, young, younger, the youngest, insignificant. And that's why they have to recruit the help of the U.S. because they're insignificant as far as their military might. They're a weak nation militarily. But really, as far as monetarily, they own all the banks. They own all the industries. Esau, or Amalek, the Jews, so-called Jews. They call themselves Jews today. They own all the industries. They own all the money. The top tribe. As far as money-wise and power, but they're very insignificant when it comes to war and power. So they have to recruit, the U.S. They have to draw them out, at least of the flock, drawing them out to help them take down Iran. And also the youngest, they are the youngest. You go into the Genesis 36 chapter. It lists the descendants of Esau. It says, "Thus dwell Esau in Mount Seir." Esau is Edom. Yes, there's no getting around that, man. Esau is Edom, man. And these are the generation of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. Eliphaz. These are names of Esau's sons. Eliphaz. He was Amalek was his child, so he was the grandchild. She bare him Eliphaz. Just jumping down to verse 12. And Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare to him Eliphaz Amalek. Okay, so he was Eliphaz's son, Esau's grandson. Yeah, So here's just a little family tree, just to get a better understanding. Family of Esau, chiefs of Edom. So here's Esau. Here's his his 5 sons: Eliphaz, Jeshush, Jalam, Korah, and Roel. They're their children. Esau's grandchildren, and Eliphaz's grandchildren by Adah. And then there's the concubine Timnah, and she bore him Amalek. He was the youngest. Just do like a little Google search, AI, Google, what year was Amalek born in relation to Esau's other grandchildren. It says, in the biblical genealogy of Esau's descendants, Amalek is consistently listed as the last or youngest of the grandsons born to Esau's firstborn son, Eliphaz. Yeah, Amalek typically appears at the end of the group as descending from Eliphaz. So yeah, he was the youngest. Came a lot later than everyone else, so that's what it means by the least of the flock shall draw them out. But draw them out where? Over to the Middle East. This is Joel 2:20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face towards the east sea, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. Yeah, the northern army, referring to the American army. There's going to be a draft, and more soldiers are going to be deployed. As this World's War III, escalates, so more soldiers are going to be removed from America and headed over to that land barren and desolate. His face towards the east sea. East sea represents, the Euphrates River, and his hinder part toward the utmost sea, which is the Red Sea. And his stink shall come up. Dead bodies. The outcome of that destruction. It'll be that first job. Continual employment. He's going to sever out men of continual employment. The kingdom of heaven, man. When Yahushua returns and establish his throne, his kingdom here on planet Earth. That's going to be the first job, for these elites, to cover up and bury all them dead bodies, because that stink is going to come up. The birds are going to have a feast in that day, man. And all his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things, after that destruction. But that land barren and desolate is where, the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, all that land. He had mentioned it over here, U.S. maintains close security and defense partners. 6 Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, it's Euphrates River, and the Red Sea. Surrounds these nations, man. It's around these nations. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman. They all have naval bases. You need to keep up that home. Got all these bases all over the place. Significant military presence in that region. So I just saw this article, wanted to do a little video on it. The U.S. dragged, these are the flocks, will draw them out, man. Let's go into that word draw. So draw them out. Where there's Sakab, that means to drag. Yep, it means to drag, so it's very spiritual right now, man. Drag. He also used the term drawn, right off the scriptures, man. These flocks will draw them out. The U.S. has been drawn by Israel. So man, we're definitely in that time, man. The pages, those prophecies are speaking, and they're not lying, man. But with that, shalom.